I'd just like to find your view. What is your long-term view of the US, and how is that guiding you in terms of managing your portfolio? And I'd like to ask Gary that question.
My long-term view of the US is an optimistic one. I think there is no other country in the world that comes even close to the US in terms of its ability to produce exceptional growth companies. It has all the ingredients that you want for that endeavor. World-class academic institutions, a broad, deep venture capital ecosystem. It's a magnet for talent for individuals from all over the world. It's still the place to be if you want to build a phenomenal company. And so I remain optimistic on the long-term potential for the US. I think there's no other country that even comes close. And I think that play out over the last 5 years in terms of diverging outcomes for the US economy versus some of the other advanced economies around the world.
Interesting. Land of the free and land of opportunity. Sven, what's your view? What's your philosophy on this?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, from a long-term perspective, the US is still front and center. I mean, we've seen what changed over the last 2 years now. 70% of the global equity markets are in the US, especially when we look at technology, that number gets even bigger. So they play a huge role. But there's also the earnings power in the US. We do expect earnings growth for the large cap market S&P 500 of around 13% this year. For the small cap market is even higher than that going into next year. So no matter what part of the market we look at, we think the US is still front and center. We see this from clients, we see this in demand, we see this in inflow. So yes, the US election might be something that increases volatility, but if you bring it back to the fundamental bottom-up, companies in the US are really, really strong. More so in the large cap space than in the small cap space, but I think this is exactly why this offers opportunities going forward.
Excellent. Opportunities going forward. That sounds good. Dean, what's your view on the long-term opportunities in the US? What's your view?
It's hard to argue with the ability for the US to continue to innovate and drive growth. And you just look at what's happened in the past 12 months where major economies and developed economies around the world are suffering. And we're seeing, what's happening in China with this economic slowdown while the US continues to chug along. And I think Canada is fortunately, riding on the coattails there because about 80% of our exports go into the US market. About 17 or 18% of US exports come into Canada. We're their largest export market. So at the end of the day, I think Canada is well positioned because I do believe in the long-term power of the US economy, because I do believe it has that unique set of ingredients that continues to allow it to grow, regardless of the political situation, which you go through this over the last 50, 60, 70, hundreds of years. The US has always got challenges politically and domestically, but they find ways to overcome them because the other areas of their economy continue to drive innovation and growth. And I think at the end of the day, that's really going to drive greater productivity and a better standard of living, which unfortunately in Canada, we benefit from as well.